My sister's betrayal twisted in my gut like a dull knife, reborn in 1,000 small cuts over the years. Again. She'd done it again. I stood in my kitchen, flour dusting my tired hands, staring at the text message glowing on my phone. Need anniversary cake for Tom by tomorrow. Something special. You'll do it, right? Not a question, a command. The clock on the wall read 11:37 p.m. I'd just finished a 14-hour shift at Rosewood Bakery, where I worked, my fingers cramping from piping intricate buttercream flowers onto a wedding cake. The thought of starting another project made my shoulders slump with exhaustion. The smell of vanilla extract still clung to my skin, a scent that usually comforted me, but now seemed to mock my inability to say no to Emily. "Please," came the follow-up text. "You know how important this is to me." I sighed, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest whenever I tried to stand up to my sister. My thumb hovered over the keyboard as I considered refusing. But the memory of last Thanksgiving's meltdown when I declined to make her office party cupcakes still haunted me. The screaming, the tears, the disappointed looks from our parents. "Fine," I typed. "What time tomorrow?" The reply came instantly. "You're the best. Dinner at 7. Make it chocolate with that raspberry filling he loves." I tossed my phone onto the counter, wincing at the sharp clatter it made against the tile. The neighbor's dog started barking at the sudden noise. Great. Another thing to feel guilty about. Sleep pulled at me, but I dragged myself to the pantry and began gathering ingredients: cake flour, cocoa powder, sugar. As I measured and mixed, I tried to remember when I'd last done something for myself, rather than bending to Emily's demands. The mixer whirred loudly in the quiet apartment, its familiar rhythm steadying my trembling hands. "This is the last time," I whispered to the empty kitchen. The lie tasted bitter, but I clung to it anyway. The next evening, I balanced the cake box carefully as I knocked on my sister's apartment door. The cake inside was a marvel, if I said so myself. 3 layers of dark chocolate with raspberry filling, covered in ganache that gleamed like satin. I'd even added chocolate shards and fresh raspberries for decoration, despite my exhaustion. Tom answered, his broad smile faltering slightly when he saw it was me. "Oh, hey, Daniel, right?" He fumbled with my name even though we'd met at least 5 times. "Jake," I corrected, forcing a smile. "Happy anniversary." He stepped back to let me in, taking the cake box with casual indifference. "Thanks, man. Emily's just finishing getting ready." The apartment smelled of an overwhelming cologne, something expensive and cloying that tickled my nose unpleasantly. Tom placed the cake on the dining table, already set for 2, with candles and wine glasses. A romantic evening I'd helped create for a man who couldn't remember my name. As he moved to open the wine, I noticed something odd. A pale band of skin around his left ring finger. A wedding ring tan line. My stomach dropped. I blinked, wondering if I was seeing things in my tired state. But no, it was definitely there. The telltale mark of a recently removed wedding band. Emily emerged from the bedroom in a red dress that clung to her curves, her dark hair swept up elegantly. She beamed when she saw me. "Jake, you came through." She gave me a quick, perfunctory hug, then immediately turned to examine the cake. "Oh, it's perfect. Tom, look what Jake made for us." Tom wandered over, placing a possessive hand on my sister's waist. "Looks great," he said without really looking at it. His eyes were fixed on Emily, a hunger in them that made me uncomfortable. I cleared my throat. "Well, I should get going. Let you two enjoy your evening." "Wait," Emily said, grabbing my wrist. Her nails dug into my skin. "Open the wine for us? Tom always breaks the corks." As I uncorked the bottle, I struggled to find the right words. Was it my place to say something? The tan line could mean anything. Maybe he was divorced. Maybe. 1 year today, Emily was saying, pressing herself against Tom's side. Can you believe it? Best year of my life, Tom replied, kissing her neck. I placed the open bottle on the table. Emily, can I talk to you for a second? In private? She rolled her eyes but followed me to the kitchen. What's so important it can't wait? The words stuck in my throat. Tom has a tan line on his ring finger. I expected shock, confusion. Instead, Emily laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Oh, that. I know he's married. She waved her hand as if swatting away an annoying fly. They're separated, getting divorced soon. I stared at her. You're dating a married man? Don't look at me like that. It's complicated. She folded her arms defensively. His wife doesn't understand him. They haven't been together for months. That's what they all say, I thought, but didn't dare speak aloud. As Emily turned to leave the kitchen, I caught another whiff of that cologne, and suddenly realized why it bothered me so much. It was the same brand my ex had worn, the one who'd cheated on me with a separated man who was supposedly getting divorced. I gripped the counter, a wave of nausea washing over me. Emily, be careful. These situations rarely end well. Her expression hardened. Don't project your issues onto me. Just because Michael cheated on you doesn't mean Tom is like that. The casual mention of my ex's name sent a jolt through me. Emily knew how painful that breakup had been, how devastated I'd been discovering Michael's lies. I'm just concerned, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Well, don't be. I know what I'm doing. She poured 2 glasses of wine, effectively ending the conversation. Thanks for the cake. I'll text you about Mom's birthday next week. Dismissed? I gathered my jacket and headed for the door, pausing only to say goodbye to Tom, who barely acknowledged me. Outside in the hallway, I leaned against the wall, drawing in deep breaths of air untainted by that cologne. A neighbor walked past with a small dog, giving me a curious look. I straightened up and headed for the elevator, feeling somehow both hollow and heavy. The next morning, I was elbow-deep in bread dough at Rosewood when my phone buzzed with a notification. A new review for the bakery had been posted online. I wiped my hands on my apron and checked it, expecting the usual praise for our pastries. Instead, I found a 1-star review complaining about stale products and rude service. My heart raced as I read it, knowing none of it was true. The owner, Mrs. Chen, was meticulous about freshness, and our customer service was something we prided ourselves on. What bothered me more was the username, Emily B. 2788. It couldn't be. My sister wouldn't. But as I scrolled through past reviews, I found 3 more negative comments from the same account over the past 2 months. All false. All potentially damaging to the small bakery that was my refuge, my safe space away from family drama. The dough beneath my fingers suddenly felt like lead. I remembered Emily asking about my work Instagram password a while back, just to see your pretty cake photos. I'd thought nothing of it at the time. My phone buzzed again, a text from Emily. Cake was amazing. Tom loved it. Can you make a batch of those lemon tarts for Mom's dinner on Sunday? The casual request after what I'd just discovered made something crack inside me. I typed back, "Why are you posting fake reviews of my workplace?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "What are you talking about?" I saw them, Emily. Emily B. 2788? Your birth year? Really? A long pause. Then, the service was rude last time I came in, and those croissants were definitely day old. My hands shook as I replied, "You haven't been in for months. Why would you do this?" Maybe if you didn't waste your talent at that little hole in the wall, you could afford your own place instead of that shoebox apartment Mom and Dad helped you pay for. The words hit like a slap. It was true that our parents helped with my rent occasionally when catering jobs were slow, something Emily never let me forget. But these reviews could actually cost me my job. "Delete them," I typed. "Now?" "Drama queen," came the reply. "It's just business. Besides, if Rosewood closes, you could finally start your own place like you've been talking about forever." But I couldn't start my own place. Not when Emily knew I was still rebuilding my savings after Michael had emptied our joint account when he left. Not when she knew the hospital bills from my stress-induced panic attacks had wiped out my emergency fund. She was trying to keep me dependent. The realization washed over me like ice water. "I have to get back to work," I wrote, unable to continue the conversation without saying something I'd regret. I put my phone away and returned to the dough, kneading it with more force than necessary. The familiar motion gradually calmed me, the smell of yeast and flour centering me. Mrs. Chen walked by, patting my shoulder in silent appreciation of my work. At least someone valued me. Sunday dinner at my parents' house was always an exercise in restraint. Today, with the knowledge of Emily's betrayal still fresh, it felt like walking into a minefield. Mom greeted me with her usual quick hug, immediately taking the box of lemon tarts I'd made. Not for Emily, but because I never showed up empty-handed. "They look wonderful, Jake," she said, then called out, "Emily, look what your brother brought." Dad emerged from his den, newspaper in hand. "There's my boy. How's the bakery?" "Good," I said, carefully avoiding mentioning the fake reviews. "Mrs. Chen's training me on her special sourdough technique." Dad's smile faltered slightly. "Still just an employee, huh? When are you going to move on to bigger things?" Before I could answer, Emily swept in, immediately commanding attention in her designer outfit. Tom followed, looking uncomfortable in the family setting. "Jake, you brought tarts. I knew you would." Emily kissed my cheek, acting as if our text confrontation had never happened. The scent of her perfume, something new and expensive, made my nose itch. Dinner was the usual performance. Emily dominated the conversation with stories about her real estate successes, while our parents nodded and praised her ambition. I pushed food around my plate, contributing only when directly addressed. "So, Tom," Dad said eventually, "what do you do again?" "Investment banking," Tom replied smoothly, "though I'm between positions at the moment." "He's being modest," Emily interjected. "He's considering offers from several major firms." The wedding ring tan line was still visible on Tom's hand as he reached for his wine glass. I wondered if my parents noticed, if they'd care if they did. When the conversation turned to Emily and Tom's anniversary, I couldn't stay silent any longer. "Did you know Tom's married?" The words escaped before I could reconsider. A heavy silence fell over the table. Mom's fork paused midway to her mouth. Dad stared at me, then at Tom. Emily laughed too loudly. "Jake, I told you they're separated. The divorce is almost finalized." She turned to our parents. "Jake's being dramatic again. You know how he gets." "I'm not being dramatic," I said, the familiar defensiveness rising in my throat. "I just think—" "You always do this," Emily cut me off. "Just because your relationship failed spectacularly doesn't mean you need to judge mine." Mom reached for my hand across the table. "Honey, I'm sure Emily knows what she's doing." "Besides," Dad added, "these things are complicated, not black and white." I looked from one face to another, seeing the united front. They'd always stand with Emily, always justify her actions while scrutinizing mine. "You're right," I said, pushing back from the table. "It's not my business." I stood and began clearing plates, retreating to the kitchen where the clatter of dishes could mask the roaring in my ears. The familiar scent of my mother's lemon-scented dish soap filled my nostrils as I scrubbed at a pot with unnecessary vigor. Emily appeared in the doorway. "You need to stop making scenes," she hissed. Tom was uncomfortable. "Poor Tom," I muttered. "Hope his wife isn't too uncomfortable about your anniversary celebration." "God, you're exhausting." She leaned against the counter. "Look, I need another favor. Tom's moving in with me temporarily. His lease ended." I turned to face her. "His lease ended? Or his wife changed the locks?" Emily's eyes narrowed. "Don't be an ass. Just make sure you have those raspberry tartlets for my office party next week. My boss loves them." With that, she swept out, leaving me alone among the dirty dishes, my hands red and raw from the hot water. Through the kitchen window, I could see my reflection. Shoulders hunched, expression defeated. Behind me in the dining room, laughter resumed as if nothing had happened. I dried my hands on a dish towel, feeling the rough texture against my skin, grounding myself in the sensation. Tomorrow I would go back to the bakery, back to my safe space. For now, that would have to be enough. "Jake, have you seen my professional piping set?" Mrs. Chen's voice called from the front of the bakery. "The one with the gold tips?" My stomach dropped. I'd been searching the supply room for 20 minutes, growing increasingly frantic. The specialized piping set, imported from France and worth several $100s, was gone, and I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly where it was. "I can't find it," I called back, emerging from the storage area. "I'm so sorry." Mrs. Chen's brow furrowed with concern. "The Whitman wedding cake needs those specific tips. It's what they approved in the design." I pulled out my phone, already composing a text to Emily. 3 days ago, she'd asked to borrow some cake decorating stuff for a friend's birthday. I'd reluctantly agreed, specifically telling her the gold-tipped set was off-limits. "I think my sister might have it," I admitted, shame burning my cheeks. "I'll get it back immediately." Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. "The consult is at 3. We need it by then." I nodded, already dialing Emily's number. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. "I'll go to her apartment," I promised. "I'll be back in time." The crosstown bus crawled through midday traffic, each stop intensifying my anxiety. The smell of exhaust and someone's greasy fast food lunch turned my stomach. When we finally reached Emily's neighborhood, I practically ran the 3 blocks to her building. I pounded on her door, knowing she had the day off. After several long moments, it swung open to reveal Emily in yoga pants, looking annoyed. "What?" she demanded. "The gold piping set," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need it back. Now." She rolled her eyes. "Come in. I'll find it." Her apartment was immaculate, as always, every surface gleaming. I followed her to the kitchen, where she rummaged through a drawer before pulling out a zippered case. "Here," she said, tossing it onto the counter. "No need for the emergency visit." I unzipped it with trembling fingers. Inside, 3 of the delicate gold tips were bent beyond repair. The handcrafted silicone piping bags had been cut shorter, destroying their careful calibration. "What did you do?" I whispered, horror rising in my throat. Emily glanced over with casual indifference. "Oh, they were too long for the project, and some of the tips got bent when I washed them. No big deal, right?" "No big deal!" My voice rose. "This set cost over $600. Mrs. Chen imported it from a master craftsman in Paris." "Geez, calm down. I'll buy you new ones." "You can't. These are custom-made. There's a waiting list of months." The anxiety that had been building burst forth. "The Whitman wedding is our biggest client this year. If we lose them..." Always so dramatic, Emily sighed, pouring herself a glass of water. It's just cake decorating. The dismissal of my profession, my passion, ignited something in me. It's my career, Emily. My livelihood. You knew how important these were. She shrugged. You'll figure something out. You always do. She checked her Apple Watch. I have a yoga class in 20 minutes. Is there anything else? I carefully packed the damaged equipment, mind racing through alternatives for the Whitman consult. Maybe the silver tips could work if I explained the situation. Thanks for nothing, I muttered, heading for the door. By the way, Emily called after me. Mom wants to know if you're bringing anyone to Aunt Carol's anniversary party. She's worried about you being alone all the time. I paused, hand on the doorknob. I'm not alone. I have friends. Your baking buddies? She laughed. Mom thinks you might be depressed again. She asked if you're taking your medication. The implication stung. My medication was for anxiety, prescribed after the whole Michael disaster, not depression, and I'd been stable for months. I'm fine, I said firmly. Tell Mom to worry about her own business. We're all just concerned about your mental state, Emily said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I hated. After what happened last year. Last year? When I'd had a panic attack at a family gathering after Emily had cornered me about my lack of ambition. They'd never let me forget it. I left without another word. The damaged piping set clutched to my chest like a wounded animal. By some miracle, Mrs. Chen and I salvaged the Whitman consult. I'd worked frantically to straighten the bent tips, and though they weren't perfect, the clients hadn't noticed the difference from the original design photos. You're lucky, Mrs. Chen said afterwards, though her tone was kind. But we must replace these soon. I nodded, already calculating how much of my savings it would cost. Money I'd been putting aside for my own place someday. As I was closing up shop, my phone rang. Mom's number. Jake, honey, are you coming to lunch on Thursday? Emily says you might be having one of your episodes. The hesitation in her voice made me grip the counter. I'm not having an episode. Emily ruined Mrs. Chen's equipment and I was upset. Well, she said you seemed very agitated. Unstable, even. Unstable. The word rattled around my head. I'm fine, Mom. Just busy with work. You know we worry. After what the doctor said? I have to go, I interrupted. The bakery needs closing up. I ended the call and sat heavily on a stool. The smell of sugar and butter that usually comforted me, now cloying and overwhelming. Emily was telling our family I was unstable. The thought made me dizzy. The bell over the door jingled, startling me. We were technically closed, but I hadn't locked up yet. Sorry, I began, then stopped when I saw who it was. Tom, Emily's boyfriend. He stood awkwardly in the entrance, looking uncomfortable. Hey, he said. Jake, right? At least he remembered my name this time. We're closed. I know, I was just passing by and saw the lights on. He stepped further inside, glancing around at the display cases, now mostly empty. Nice place. I remained silent, wondering what he wanted. Look, he finally said. Emily mentioned you were upset about some baking tools. She feels bad. I doubted that very much. Did she send you to smooth things over? He shrugged. Sort of. She's at dinner with a client. He pulled out his wallet. She wanted me to give you this. He handed me $200 bills, not even a third of what the piping set was worth. Tell her to keep it, I said, pushing the money back. The damage is done. Tom awkwardly pocketed the cash. She also asked if you could make some kind of dessert for her open house this weekend. Something fancy that'll impress potential buyers. Of course she did. Damage my livelihood, then immediately ask for more free labor. I can't, I said. I'm busy. Tom shifted uncomfortably. She said you'd say that. She also said to remind you about the rent help your parents give you. The implicit threat hung in the air. If I didn't cooperate, Emily would make sure our parents knew how difficult I was being, how unstable. Fine, I said through gritted teeth. Text me the details. Tom nodded, seemingly relieved to have completed his mission. As he turned to leave, his phone rang. He glanced at it, then quickly declined the call, but not before I caught a glimpse of the screen. Wife was the caller ID. So much for almost finalized divorce. After Tom left, I locked the door and leaned against it, my mind racing. Emily knew. She knew he was still very much married, still very much entangled with his wife. And she was involving me in their deception. I pulled out my phone and searched Tom Harrington Investment Banker, along with our city name. Several results popped up, including a company website with his photo and biography. Married to Diane Harrington, 2 children. There was a link to her separate profile. Diane Harrington, divorce attorney. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't so tragic. I clicked on her profile, studied her professional photo. An elegant woman with a confident smile and sharp eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. A plan began to form in my mind. A quiet rebellion against years of letting my sister push me around. With slightly trembling fingers, I copied down the address of Diane's law office. Tomorrow, I'd pay her a visit. The law offices of Caldwell and Partners occupied a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel. I felt out of place in my simple button-down and slacks, carrying a small white bakery box as my excuse for being there. The receptionist looked up as I approached her desk. "Can I help you?" "I have a delivery for Diane Harrington," I said, trying to sound professional. "A client sent these as a thank you." It wasn't technically a lie. I was potentially a client, and the box contained 6 meticulously crafted petit fours that I'd stayed up half the night perfecting. "I'll need to check if she's available," the receptionist said, reaching for her phone. "It's just a drop-off," I assured her. "I don't need to see her personally." The woman hesitated, then nodded. "I can take them for you." "Actually," I said quickly, "I was instructed to hand-deliver them with a message. It'll just take a moment." She sighed, but buzzed me through. "Third door on the right. She's between appointments." My heart hammered as I walked down the hallway, the smell of furniture polish and expensive perfume filling my nostrils. At the third door, I knocked softly. "Come in," called a voice. Diane Harrington looked up from her desk as I entered, her expression curious. She was even more striking in person, with dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Mrs. Harrington," I began, my mouth suddenly dry. "My name is Jake Bennett. I brought you these." I placed the box on her desk. She raised an eyebrow. "I don't recall ordering anything from—" "Rosewood Bakery," I supplied. "And you didn't. I actually came because I think you should know something." Her expression shifted instantly, professional wariness replacing curiosity. "What is this about, Mr. Bennett?" I took a deep breath. "It's about your husband, Tom." Her face hardened. "If Tom sent you—" "No," I said quickly. "Quite the opposite. I'm Emily Bennett's brother. Your husband has been dating my sister for over a year." A flicker of something, pain, anger, resignation, crossed her face, but she quickly masked it. "I'm aware of my husband's indiscretions." That surprised me. "You know about Emily?" "I know there's someone. I didn't know her name until now." She folded her hands on her desk. "Why are you telling me this, Mr. Bennett?" The question hung in the air. Why was I here, betraying my own sister? "Because it's wrong," I said simply. Because my sister knows he's married and doesn't care. Because I've been made complicit in their deception, baking anniversary cakes and pretending everything is fine when it's not. Diane studied me for a long moment. That's very principled of you. Or petty, I admitted. Emily has been difficult lately, but mostly I just couldn't stand by anymore. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. Sit down, Mr. Bennett. I sat, feeling the smooth leather cool against my palms. Would you be willing to provide dates, locations, any evidence of their relationship? Her voice was calm, professional, but I could hear the undercurrent of hurt. I can tell you what I know, I said. But there's something else. Tom told my family he's separated from you, that the divorce is almost finalized. A short, harsh laugh escaped her. Is that what he's saying? We're not separated. He still lives at home for our children's sake, though he's rarely there. And while I've been considering divorce, I've held off filing because he claimed he wanted to work things out. The depths of Tom's deception stunned me. I'm sorry, I said inadequately. Don't be. You're not the one lying. She opened the bakery box, examining the petit fours inside. These look exquisite. Thank you. I made them myself. She selected one and took a small bite, closing her eyes briefly. Incredible, she murmured. You're very talented. The compliment, so genuine and unexpected, warmed me in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. Mr. Bennett, Jake, I appreciate you coming forward. This information will be useful. She took out a business card and wrote something on the back. My personal number. If there's anything else you think I should know, please call. I took the card, feeling the weight of its heavy cardstock between my fingers. Will you tell Tom you know about Emily? Not yet, she said, a calculating look in her eyes. I think it's better to gather more information first. Build a stronger case. I nodded, standing to leave. At the door, I paused. Mrs. Harrington. Diane, please. Diane? I want you to know I'm not doing this for revenge. I couldn't be part of the lie anymore. She studied me for a moment. Sometimes, she said carefully, the quiet power moves are the most effective ones. Thank you for your honesty. As I left the building, stepping into the bright sunlight, I felt lighter somehow. For once, I had acted instead of reacting. Taken control instead of being controlled. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Need you to clear your stuff from the spare room by Friday. Tom's moving in temporarily. The familiar dread returned, but it was different now. I texted back, We need to talk about this. Her reply came quickly. Nothing to talk about. Your rent, my rules. The apartment had been Emily's first, but we'd been roommates for 3 years. My name wasn't on the lease, giving her all the power. Again. I slipped Diane's card into my wallet, a small reminder that I wasn't completely powerless anymore. For the first time in years, I'd made a choice that was entirely my own. That's Jake's lemon raspberry mousse cake, I heard Mom say as I entered the dining room carrying a bottle of wine for Sunday dinner. He made it for my birthday last year. Emily's laugh rang out. Actually, I made this one. Found the recipe online and thought I'd try my hand at baking. I froze in the doorway. On the table sat a perfect replica of my signature dessert, the one I'd spent years perfecting, adapting from Grandma's old recipe, the one Emily had watched me make dozens of times. Well, it looks wonderful, honey, Dad beamed at her. I didn't know you were interested in baking. Just dabbling, Emily said modestly, though Tom says I have a natural talent for it. Tom, seated beside her, nodded. Better than most bakeries. The wine bottle nearly slipped from my grip. Emily caught my eye across the room, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. She knew exactly what she was doing. "Jake," Mom called, finally noticing me. "Come see what your sister made. Maybe you can give her some pointers." I approached the table, the smell of lemon and raspberry filling my nostrils. It looked perfect. The mirror glaze shining just right, the decorative chocolate work placed exactly as I would have done it. "Wow," I managed. "Impressive." Emily beamed. "Thanks, I was hoping for your approval." The smug insincerity in her voice made my jaw clench. She'd never shown the slightest interest in baking before. This was about showing she could take this from me too, just like everything else. Throughout dinner, my parents and aunt lavished praise on Emily's dessert. "Such a light texture. The flavor balance is perfect. You've got your grandmother's touch." I pushed the cake around on my plate, tasting nothing but betrayal. When Emily announced she was thinking of taking a baking class, just for fun, I excused myself to the kitchen, using dishes as an excuse. The sound of running water couldn't drown out the continued praise from the dining room. I gripped the edge of the sink, trying to steady my breathing. The kitchen had always been my domain, my talent, the one thing Emily couldn't diminish or overshadow. Until now. "You okay?" My Aunt Karen's voice startled me. She placed a stack of plates beside the sink, her expression concerned. "You've barely said 2 words all night." I forced a smile. "Just tired. Busy week at the bakery." She looked like she wanted to say more, but just patted my arm sympathetically. "Your grandmother would have been proud of you, you know," following in her footsteps. The mention of Grandma made my throat tighten. She'd been the one to teach me to bake, to encourage my passion when my parents viewed it as merely a hobby. Her small bakery, closed since her death 5 years ago, had been my inspiration. "Thanks," I murmured. Aunt Karen lowered her voice. "Don't let Emily get to you. We all know where she got that recipe." The small acknowledgement warmed me, a tiny victory in an otherwise defeating evening. When I left that night, I found Emily waiting by my car. "The cake was good, right?" she asked, arms folded against the chill night air. "I've been practicing." "Why?" I asked, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. "Why take the one thing that's mine?" She shrugged. "Just expanding my horizons. Besides, it's a family recipe, not like you own it." "You don't even like baking. You've always said it was a waste of time." "People change." She smiled thinly. "Tom thinks I could be really good at it. Says I have the touch." I unlocked my car door. "Congratulations. You've conquered another field with minimal effort. Feel better now?" Her expression hardened. "Don't be bitter. It's not attractive." As I drove home, the sweet scent of raspberry still clinging to my clothes, I wondered if there was anything of mine that Emily wouldn't try to take or diminish. The thought haunted me all the way back to our apartment. 2 days later, I came home from a morning shift to find our kitchen in chaos. Flour dusted every surface, eggshells littered the counter, and a burnt smell lingered in the air. My carefully labeled containers of specialty ingredients lay open and half empty. Worst of all, my sourdough starter, lovingly cultivated for 8 months, had been left out with the lid off, contaminated and ruined. Tom sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone, seemingly oblivious to the destruction around him. "What happened?" I demanded, surveying the damage. He glanced up, unconcerned. "Emily wanted to surprise you with some bread thing. Got called into work for an emergency showing." I picked up my starter container, a sick feeling in my stomach. "Did she use this?" "I don't know, maybe. She was using a lot of stuff." The cavalier response made my blood boil. "This was alive, a culture I've been feeding for months. It can't just be replaced." Tom shrugged. It's just flour and water, right? Make another one. I closed my eyes, counting to 10 silently. The yeasty, sour smell of my ruined starter filled my nostrils, a painful reminder of countless hours of care wasted. These ingredients, I said, gesturing to the open containers, are expensive. Specialty flours, imported chocolate, Madagascar vanilla. I use them for professional orders. Emily said you wouldn't mind. He finally looked up from his phone. She said you always share your stuff. The half-truth stung. I shared when asked, when it was respected. Not like this. I have an order due tomorrow morning, I said, surveying the depletion of my supplies. I needed these. Just buy more, Tom suggested, as if it were that simple. As if specialty ingredients could be picked up at any corner store. As if I hadn't budgeted carefully for each purchase. I began cleaning silently, the rhythmic motions helping to calm my anger. Tom watched for a moment, then stood. By the way, Emily said to tell you she used the last of the eggs for her practice cake, and we're out of milk. With that, he retreated to Emily's bedroom, our former shared living room that she'd converted when she declared the apartment needed an entertainment space. I scrubbed at a particularly stubborn spot of dried dough, my mind racing. I'd have to go back out, spend money I didn't have on replacement ingredients, stay up late to complete the order. All because Emily had decided baking was her new hobby. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen. Don't forget fondant flowers for Robinson order. The reminder sent a fresh wave of panic through me. The specialized fondant I'd prepared was among the casualties of Emily's baking experiment. I'd have to start from scratch. As I was calculating how much this disaster would cost me, a notification from our joint banking app appeared on my phone. Emily and I had maintained a small emergency account since becoming roommates, each contributing monthly. We'd dipped into it for apartment repairs, an unexpected vet bill for Emily's now-deceased cat, and once when I'd needed dental work. The notification showed a withdrawal of $3,200. My hands trembled as I opened the app. The account had been drained except for $14.32. No discussion, no warning. I called Emily immediately. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice artificially bright. Hey, did you see my baking attempt? I was trying to surprise you. Where's the money from our emergency account? I asked, cutting through her pretense. A pause. Oh, that. I needed it for something important. $3,000 important? Without even telling me? She sighed dramatically. It was an emergency, Jake. Isn't that what the account is for? What emergency? I demanded, though I had a sinking suspicion. Another pause, longer this time. Tom had some financial issues. He needed to cover something quickly. The confirmation felt like a physical blow. You gave our emergency money to Tom? For what? It's complicated, she hedged. He owes some people money from poker games. Gambling debts, I clarified, anger rising. You stole our emergency fund to pay your boyfriend's gambling debts. I didn't steal anything, Emily snapped. Half that money was mine anyway. And half was mine. Money I might need for actual emergencies. Don't be so selfish. Tom would have been in real trouble. These aren't the kind of people you can just blow off. The implication that Tom owed money to dangerous people only intensified my disbelief. So you risked our security for a man who's still married and apparently has a gambling problem? He's going through a rough patch, Emily defended. And I told you the divorce is happening soon. Does his wife know that? I couldn't help asking. Why are you so obsessed with his wife? Emily's voice turned suspicious. Have you been checking up on us? I backpedaled quickly. No, I just know these almost divorced situations rarely are what they seem. Whatever. Look, I have a client waiting. We can talk about this later. Before I could protest, she added, "By the way, I need you to make a special anniversary cake for next weekend. It's been a year since Tom moved in. Something really impressive, okay? I'll text you the details." The audacity left me speechless. She'd ruined my ingredients, stolen my money, and now wanted me to bake a celebration cake for the man responsible? "No," I said firmly. "I won't do it." Emily's tone turned cold. "Yes, you will, unless you want to find a new apartment on short notice. Remember whose name is on the lease?" The threat hung between us. Finding affordable housing in the city was nearly impossible, especially on a baker's salary. Moving would mean a longer commute to Rosewood, assuming I could find a place at all. "You wouldn't," I said, but without conviction. "Try me." The challenge in her voice was clear. "Just make the cake, Jake. It's not a big deal." After she hung up, I stood in the wreckage of my kitchen, the smell of burnt sugar and wasted ingredients surrounding me. Something inside me hardened, a resolve forming where hurt had been. I picked up my phone again and scrolled to a recent contact, Diane Harrington. As I pressed call, I felt the smooth texture of the phone case against my fingertips, grounding me in this moment of decision. When Diane answered, her voice was cautious. "Jake, is everything all right?" "I think," I said slowly, "it's time we discussed those divorce papers you mentioned." Diane's office was as immaculate as I remembered, but this time I sat across from her not as a nervous whistleblower, but as a collaborator. Between us on the desk lay a slim folder containing divorce papers, the culmination of evidence she'd been gathering for months. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" she asked, studying my face carefully. "Once we move forward, there's no going back." I thought of my ruined kitchen, my depleted savings, the years of Emily's manipulations. "I'm certain." She nodded, tapping the folder with one perfectly manicured nail. "The timing works well. My investigator has compiled enough evidence of Tom's activities to ensure I receive a favorable settlement. Your sister's involvement is well documented." "And you're okay with me doing it this way?" I asked. A small, satisfied smile curved her lips. "I find there's a certain poetry to it. Tom has always had a flair for the dramatic. It seems fitting to return the favor." We finalized the details of our plan. Diane would prepare everything, and I would deliver the papers in my own unique way. A baker's revenge. As I left her office, Diane called after me. "Jake, thank you. Not many people would have done what you did." The acknowledgement warmed me. "I should have done it sooner." "Better late than never," she replied. "And Jake, you should consider opening your own bakery someday. Those petite fours were extraordinary." The compliment stayed with me as I rode the bus back to Rosewood, where Mrs. Chen had graciously given me extra hours to make up for the ingredients I'd had to replace for the first time in years. I allowed myself to imagine a future beyond Emily's shadow, beyond being the reliable, pliable brother who always gave in. When I arrived at the bakery, Mrs. Chen was closing up, but she waited for me, a small box in her hands. "Special delivery came for you," she said, handing me the package. "From Paris." I opened it with trembling fingers to find a replacement set of gold piping tips, even more elaborate than the ones Emily had ruined. "I ordered them weeks ago," Mrs. Chen explained, "after the Whitman consultation. You have talent, Jake, real talent. Don't let anyone diminish that." Tears pricked at my eyes as I carefully examined each perfect tip, the weight of them solid and reassuring in my palm. "Thank you," I managed. "I'll repay you." She waved away my words. "Consider it an investment in your future." The kitchen felt like home as I set to work on my orders, the familiar sounds and smells wrapping around me like a protective cocoon. When the time came to begin Emily's anniversary cake, I approached it not with resentment, but with purpose. This would be my masterpiece, my statement, my reclamation. The cake took shape under my hands. 3 tiers of dark chocolate with cherry filling, Tom's favorite according to Emily's detailed instructions. I worked methodically, each layer perfect, each decoration placed with precision. When it was finished, I stood back to admire my creation. It looked exactly as Emily had requested. Elegant, expensive, impressive. No one looking at it would guess what it would deliver along with the first slice. I carefully placed the finished cake in a box, then reached for the manila envelope Diane had given me. The divorce papers inside were crisp and official, the legal language spelling out the end of Tom's double life. I slipped them into a separate compartment in the specialty box, feeling the smooth texture of the paper between my fingers, imagining the moment they would be revealed. For once, I would not be the one taken by surprise. For once, I would be in control of the narrative. Emily texted as I was cleaning up. "Cake done? Tom's really excited." "All done," I replied. "My best work yet." It wasn't even a lie. I was 7 years old the first time I realized my sister could take anything from me. It was Christmas morning, and I'd received a hand-carved wooden train set from our grandfather, a gift he'd spent months making. By dinner, Emily had convinced our parents it should be shared in the playroom. By New Year's, it was in her room, and I was allowed to visit it occasionally. By Easter, it was broken, discarded, forgotten by everyone except me. The pattern continued throughout our childhood. Books, toys, friends, anything I valued eventually became Emily's target. It wasn't enough for her to have her own things. She needed to have mine, too, especially if I loved them. What no one in my family seemed to remember, or chose to acknowledge, was that baking hadn't always been my cute hobby. Before the incident with Michael, before the panic attacks and the prescription bottles, I had been Jake Bennett, rising star pastry chef at Lumiere, the city's most prestigious French restaurant. At 26, I'd been the youngest pastry chef in the restaurant's history. My desserts featured in food magazines, my name whispered as one to watch. I'd trained in Paris, apprenticed under world-renowned masters, won competitions that chefs twice my age envied. Then came Michael. Charming, sophisticated Michael, who swept into my life like a hurricane, demanding all my attention, all my energy. Michael, who subtly criticized my long hours, who questioned my dedication to just desserts. Michael, who slowly isolated me from friends, from colleagues, from opportunities. And Emily, who encouraged the relationship despite the red flags. Emily, who befriended Michael, who took his side in arguments, who told me I was lucky to have someone so devoted when I expressed concerns about his controlling behavior. When I discovered Michael's affair, with a married man no less, the humiliation was total. The panic attacks started soon after, debilitating episodes that left me gasping for breath, convinced I was dying. I missed shifts at Lumiere, made mistakes. Executive Chef Marchand was sympathetic at first, then concerned, then frustrated. "Take some time," he finally said. "Sort yourself out. Your position will be waiting." But it wasn't. 3 months later, when I was ready to return, my replacement, a former competitor with half my talent but twice my confidence, had been made permanent. My career trajectory, once so promising, flatlined overnight. Emily had been the one to suggest I take a break from high-pressure cooking. Emily, who found me the job at Rosewood Bakery, calling it more your speed anyway. Emily, who told our parents it was for the best, that I'd been burning out at Lumiere. No one mentioned that I'd been awarded a prestigious pastry fellowship just before my breakdown. No one remembered the glowing reviews or the food critics who had praised my innovative techniques. In the revised family history, I had always been the fragile one, the one who needed protecting from his own ambitions. These thoughts circled in my mind as I carefully boxed Emily's anniversary cake, preparing for delivery. The weight of secrets, mine and others, pressed down on me, making the air feel thick and heavy. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "All set for today?" "Yes," I replied, "delivering the surprise at 7. Her response came quickly. "Perfect. Lawyer will be there at 7:15. According to Diane, Tom had been telling his wife he was working late while spending evenings with Emily. Meanwhile, he'd told Emily his wife was refusing to sign divorce papers while secretly maintaining their marriage as if nothing were wrong. The depth of his deception was almost impressive. As I closed the cake box, securing it with a ribbon, Mrs. Chen entered the kitchen. She'd been watching me closely since the piping set incident, her concern evident though rarely voiced. "Special order?" she asked, nodding at the elaborate cake. "For my sister," I replied, unable to meet her eyes. Mrs. Chen made a small noise that might have been understanding. "You are too generous with those who take advantage." The gentle rebuke made me look up. Sometimes we have to learn that lesson the hard way. She studied me for a moment, then reached into her pocket and pulled out an envelope. "This came for you. Express delivery." The thick cream envelope bore an official-looking seal. I opened it carefully, pulling out a formal letter on heavy paper that smelled faintly of cedar. "Dear Mr. Bennett," it began, "we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a finalist in the National Pastry Showcase." My hands trembled as I read further. 3 months ago, Mrs. Chen had submitted my work to a prestigious competition without telling me. My chocolate lavender eclairs and signature lemon raspberry mousse had impressed the judges enough to place me in the finals, an honor that included a substantial cash prize and, more importantly, recognition from the culinary world I'd left behind. "You entered my desserts?" I asked, looking up at Mrs. Chen in disbelief. She shrugged, a small smile playing at her lips. "You forget that before I owned a bakery, I was a judge for such competitions. I know extraordinary talent when I taste it." The validation from someone I respected deeply brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. "No thanks needed, but perhaps it is time you remembered who you are." She gestured to the cake box. "Beyond being someone's brother or assistant." Her words resonated as I carefully loaded the cake into my car. Who was I beyond the roles my family had assigned me? What might I become if I stepped out of the shadows they'd convinced me were my natural habitat? The anniversary cake sat beside me, a Trojan horse of my own making. Within its elegant layers lay the catalyst for change, not just for Tom and Emily, but for me as well. My phone rang as I was parking outside Emily's building. Aunt Karen's name flashed on the screen. "Jake, dear," she said when I answered, her voice oddly hesitant. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something." "I'm just delivering a cake to Emily," I said. "Can it wait?" "Actually, it's about Emily and your grandmother's will." I frowned, shutting off the engine. "Grandma's will? That was settled years ago. The house went to charity, and her savings were split between you, Dad, and Uncle Jim." "Yes, but there was something else. The bakery property." My breath caught. Grandma's bakery, Sweet Memories, had been closed since her death. The charming storefront on Maple Street sitting empty due to some legal complication I'd never fully understood. "What about it?" I asked, a strange anticipation building in my chest. Aunt Karen sighed. "Your grandmother left it to you, Jake. Only you. The building, the equipment, everything. With one condition, that you not be told until you were ready to stand on your own, as she put it." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "What? But that was 5 years ago. Why am I just Hearing about this now." A long pause. "Emily convinced your father you weren't ready. After what happened with the restaurant job, and then the anxiety issues, she said telling you would only pressure you and make things worse." Anger flared hot and immediate. "She had no right to make that decision." "I know, dear. I've been arguing with your father about it for years." Aunt Karen's voice hardened. "But last week I overheard Emily telling someone she was thinking of doing something with the property herself, since you clearly weren't going to use it. That's when I decided enough was enough." My mind raced. The bakery, Grandma's pride and joy, the place where I'd first learned to love baking, had been mine all along. While I'd been scraping by, saving pennies, and dreaming of someday having my own place, the perfect location had been waiting for me. And Emily had kept it from me, had planned to somehow take it for herself. "There's more," Aunt Karen continued. "There's a trust fund attached to the property, for renovations and startup costs. It's not a fortune, but it's enough to get you going." The revelation staggered me. Financial independence, creative freedom, everything I'd been working toward, everything Emily had subtly discouraged me from pursuing, had been within reach all along. "Why are you telling me this now?" I managed to ask. Aunt Karen's voice softened. "Because I saw you at Sunday dinner. Saw how Emily took credit for your cake recipe, how everyone except me failed to acknowledge your talent. And I thought Maddie would be furious if she could see this. Your grandmother believed in you, Jake. She saw your gift. It's time you reclaimed it." As we said goodbye, promising to meet soon to go over the legal details, I sat in stunned silence, the anniversary cake beside me taking on new significance. Today wasn't just about exposing Tom's lies or standing up to Emily. It was about reclaiming the narrative of my own life. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Where are you? Everyone's waiting." Everyone. The party was supposed to be just a small dinner for her, Tom, and a few close friends. What had she planned? I gathered the cake and made my way to her apartment building. The weight of the box, nothing compared to the burden of secrets and lies that would soon be exposed. The doorman recognized me and waved me through, the familiar scent of the lobby's fresh flowers filling my nostrils as I headed for the elevator. Outside Emily's door, I could hear the murmur of many voices, the clink of glasses, music playing softly. Far more than the intimate gathering she'd described. I shifted the cake to one arm and knocked. Emily opened the door, resplendent in a new dress that probably cost more than a month of my rent. Her eyes widened at the sight of the cake. "Oh my God, Jake, it's gorgeous." She ushered me in, taking the box carefully. "Everyone, look what my talented brother made." The apartment was full of people, colleagues from Emily's real estate firm, friends from her social circle, our parents, even a few distant relatives. All dressed for a significant celebration, all turning to admire the cake as Emily placed it on a central table decorated with flowers and champagne flutes. Tom stood nearby, looking uncomfortable in a new suit, his eyes darting nervously around the room. He nodded tersely when he saw me. "What's all this?" I asked Emily quietly. "I thought it was just a small dinner." She smiled radiantly. "Change of plans. We decided to make it a proper celebration." She lowered her voice. "Tom has a big announcement to make. The divorce went through last week. He's officially free." The blatant lie made my chest tighten. I glanced at my watch. 7:10. 5 minutes until Diane's lawyer was scheduled to arrive. "That's wonderful," I managed. Emily squeezed my arm. "I know we've had our differences lately, but I'm so glad you're here for this moment. It means everything to have my big brother's support." The genuine emotion in her voice took me by surprise. For a moment, I saw the little sister who had once looked up to me, who had cried when I left for culinary school in Paris, who had sent care packages with handwritten notes saying how proud she was. When had things changed? When had admiration turned to competition, affection to manipulation? My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from Diane. Coming up now? There was still time to change course. To pull Emily aside, warn her, create some story about the cake being ruined and needing to be replaced. I could spare her the public humiliation that was minutes away. But then my eyes fell on our parents, beaming proudly at their daughter while barely acknowledging my existence. At Tom, checking his watch nervously, maintaining his fiction. At the property deed and trust fund information Aunt Karen had just sent to my email, proof of years of deliberate suppression of my dreams. Everyone hushed as Emily clinked a spoon against her glass. Thank you all for coming to celebrate with us tonight. This past year has been transformative. She smiled at Tom, who moved to stand beside her. As you know, Tom and I have been waiting for his divorce to finalize before making any big decisions. Murmurs of sympathy rippled through the crowd. Well, Emily continued, we don't have to wait anymore. She looked expectantly at Tom, who cleared his throat. That's right, he said, voice slightly strained. Emily and I have an announcement to make. My phone buzzed again. In the lobby, coming up? Emily's eyes shone as she gestured to the cake. But first, we have to cut this amazing anniversary cake my brother made for us. Jake, would you do the honors? She handed me a cake knife, its silver surface cool and smooth against my palm. A perfect prop for the drama about to unfold. The room quieted as I approached the cake, all eyes on me. Before I cut this, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my voice, I want to say something. Emily's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't part of her script. My sister and I have had a complicated relationship over the years, but one thing has remained constant, her absolute certainty about what she wants. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Emily's smile became fixed. This cake, I continued, represents hours of work, precision, attention to detail. I looked directly at Tom. Hiding things inside other things. His face paled visibly. In fact, I said, putting down the knife and instead reaching for the box the cake had come in, there's a special surprise with this cake, something I think everyone here should see before we cut into it. The doorbell rang just as I pulled out the manila envelope from the cake box. Emily's eyes widened as she recognized the legal document formatting visible through the paper. Jake, she hissed, what are you doing? I handed the envelope to Tom, whose hands shook as he took it. Just delivering what's been a long time coming, I said. Surprise. The room fell silent as Tom stared at the envelope in his hands. The Caldwell and Partners law firm logo clearly visible in the upper corner. His fingers trembled slightly as he turned it over, the paper making a soft, crackling sound in the hushed apartment. What is this? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Emily stepped forward, her smile now strained as she addressed the confused guests. I'm sure it's just some paperwork for the cake business Jake's always talking about starting. She laughed too loudly. Always with the dramatic timing, my brother. But her eyes told a different story. Alarm, confusion, the beginnings of anger. The scent of her perfume, sharp with anxiety, reached me as she moved closer. Open it, I said calmly to Tom. I think everyone here would be interested in the contents. Emily's hand shot out, trying to snatch the envelope. This isn't the time for whatever this is. Actually, came a voice from the doorway, the timing is perfect. Heads turned to see a striking woman in a tailored suit standing in the entryway. Diane Harrington, elegant and composed, stepped into the apartment with purpose, followed by a stern-looking man carrying a briefcase. Tom's face drained of all color, Diane, he breathed. What are you? Hello, Tom. Her voice was ice. Surprise. Emily looked between them, realization dawning. You're the wife. Diane smiled thinly. Yes, the wife. The one you've been told is refusing to sign divorce papers. She gestured to the envelope in Tom's hands. Which is interesting, considering those are the first divorce papers either of us has seen. The murmurs from the guests grew louder. I caught sight of my parents, my father's face darkening with confusion, my mother's hand covering her mouth in shock. Emily turned to Tom, uncertainty flashing across her face. You said the divorce was final last week. You said we could finally announce. He lied, Diane stated flatly. There was never a divorce in progress. We're not even legally separated. The revelation hung in the air like a thundercloud. Emily's carefully constructed celebration crumbled visibly around her, her shoulders sagging as the truth sank in. That's not. We've been together a year, Emily protested weakly. He moved in months ago. Yes, Diane agreed, all while maintaining his residence with me and our children. Quite the juggling act. She turned to the man beside her. This is Mr. Levinson, my attorney. He has some interesting financial documents you might want to see as well, Emily. Tom finally found his voice. This is a private matter. All of you need to leave. His attempt at authority fell flat, his voice cracking under pressure. Diane raised an eyebrow. Private? Like the 3 credit cards you opened in my name? Or the second mortgage you took out without my knowledge? She addressed the stunned crowd. Did he tell you he was between positions at work? He was fired 6 months ago for embezzlement. The company didn't press charges as long as he repaid everything. Which he did, using my savings. Tom's face contorted. You're just trying to humiliate me. No, Diane replied evenly. You've done that yourself. Emily stood frozen, her perfectly planned party dissolving into chaos around her. Guests began to whisper, some discreetly heading for the door, others watching the unfolding drama with barely concealed fascination. Emily? Our mother called, moving toward her daughter. What's going on? But Emily's eyes were fixed on me, realization dawning. You, she whispered. You did this. I met her gaze steadily. I delivered the truth. Something this relationship has been missing from the start. You betrayed me, she hissed, tears welling in her eyes. Your own sister. The accusation might have wounded me once, but now I felt only a calm certainty. No, Emily. I refused to keep participating in a lie. There's a difference. Tom suddenly lunged for the door, but Mr. Levinson blocked his path. I wouldn't advise leaving, Mr. Harrington. We have some legal matters to discuss. I don't have to listen to this, Tom shouted, his composure shattering completely. He turned to Emily, desperation in his eyes. Tell them to leave. This is our celebration. Emily stood immobile, the perfect image of her perfect life crumbling before her eyes. You told me you were divorced, she said quietly. You promised. He's promised a lot of things, Diane interjected, to a lot of people. She pulled out her phone, displaying a screen to Emily. Including Melissa here, and Rebecca, both of whom also believe they're in exclusive relationships with my husband. A collective gasp rippled through the remaining guests. Emily's face drained of color, her hands clutching the edge of the table for support. The cake, my perfect creation, sat untouched, a silent witness to the unraveling. Is it true? Emily asked Tom, her voice small. Are there others? Tom's silence was answer enough. His eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal's, settling briefly on the cake box where I'd hidden the divorce papers. Understanding dawned on his face. You knew, he accused me. You set this whole thing up. I shrugged. I made a cake. What happens when you cut into it is entirely based on what you've put into the mix yourself. Our father stepped forward, finally finding his voice. I think everyone needs to calm down. We can discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss, Diane interrupted. Tom has committed financial fraud. He's facing potential criminal charges unless he cooperates fully with the divorce proceedings. She turned to Emily. I'm not here to blame you. From what I've gathered, you're as much a victim of his lies as I am. But I thought you deserved to know the truth before this went any further. Emily swayed slightly, the shock finally hitting her full force. Our mother rushed to her side, guiding her to a chair. The remaining guests began to quietly disperse, murmuring awkward goodbyes. The lavish anniversary celebration had transformed into a scene of public humiliation. Through it all, I remained beside the cake table, serving slices to those few guests brave enough to stay. The irony wasn't lost on me. The cake itself was flawless, possibly my best work yet, being consumed amid the wreckage of lies it had helped expose. Tom stood isolated near the door, watched carefully by Mr. Levinson as Diane methodically laid out the evidence of his deceptions. His confident facade had crumbled entirely, replaced by the true face of a man who had gambled everything and lost. Emily sat silent in her chair, mascara streaking her cheeks, as our mother fussed around her. Her eyes occasionally met mine across the room, a complex mix of emotions flickering across her face: hurt, betrayal, confusion, and, most surprisingly, a dawning respect. As the apartment emptied and the drama subsided to quiet legal discussions, I slipped out, leaving the aftermath for others to manage. In the hallway, Aunt Karen was waiting, having arrived late to the party only to encounter fleeing guests with wild stories. I guess it's all out now, she said, falling into step beside me toward the elevator. All of it, I confirmed. The marriage, the financial fraud, the multiple girlfriends. She whistled low. And Emily? In shock, but she'll recover, she always does. The elevator doors closed with a soft ping, sealing us in momentary privacy. And the bakery? She asked quietly. Will you claim your inheritance now? I thought of Mrs. Chen's letter, the competition finals, the trust fund waiting to be accessed. For the first time in years, possibilities stretched before me instead of limitations. Yes, I said, feeling the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. I think it's time. As we descended, Aunt Karen squeezed my hand. Your grandmother always said you were the strongest one beneath all that quiet. She'd be proud today. Outside, the evening air felt cleaner somehow, the city lights brighter. I breathed deeply, tasting possibility on the night breeze. The smooth stone steps of Emily's building felt solid beneath my feet as I descended into my new beginning. Behind me, the chaos I'd helped create continued to unfold. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also freedom, the ingredients of a life reclaimed, ready to be shaped by my own hands at last. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of activity. The National Pastry Showcase had brought me not only the second-place prize, but also connections with investors interested in the next big thing in the dessert world. Grandma's bakery property, my property, had begun its transformation, the dusty interior gutted and rebuilt according to my specifications. The trust fund, modest but adequate, covered renovations while my competition winnings purchased state-of-the-art equipment. I'd given notice at Rosewood Bakery, though Mrs. Chen insisted on helping with the new venture as a consultant. Every chef needs a critic they trust, she'd said, her approval meaning more than any review ever could. Sweet Memories would reopen in 1 month, reborn as Bennett's, a name both homage to my grandmother and statement of reclamation. My name, my talent, my future. I hadn't spoken to Emily since the disastrous anniversary party. Our parents had called, alternating between bewilderment and cautious support for my new business, but carefully avoiding mention of the rift between their children. Aunt Karen had become my fiercest advocate, handling the legal transfer of the property and introducing me to her extensive social network as the pastry genius of the family. The bell above the shop door jingled as I measured the space for display cases, the sound startling in the empty storefront. I turned to see Emily standing hesitantly in the entrance, looking smaller somehow than I remembered. "Jake," she said, her voice lacking its usual confidence. "Your phone goes straight to voicemail." "I've been busy." I continued measuring, forcing casualness I didn't feel. The scent of sawdust and fresh paint filled the air between us, new and unfamiliar. She stepped further inside, taking in the renovations. "It looks amazing already. Very you." I finally looked at her properly. She'd lost weight, dark circles under her eyes visible despite careful makeup. Her typically perfect hair seemed limp, her designer clothes replaced by simpler attire. "What do you want, Emily?" I asked, setting down my tape measure. She moved to the counter, running her fingers along the newly installed marble surface. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked up at me, the sound of a passing truck rumbling outside. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "For everything?" The apology hung in the air between us, unexpected and unadorned. I set down my tools, studying her face for signs of manipulation, the usual calculated emotion I'd grown to recognize over the years. Instead, I saw only exhaustion and genuine regret, tears streaming down her cheeks now, leaving trails through her makeup. "Tom's gone," she continued, wiping hastily at her face. "He emptied my accounts before the divorce papers were even filed, took my jewelry, too." She laughed bitterly. "Diane warned me he would, but I didn't listen." "I'm sorry that happened to you," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "No one deserves that." Emily nodded, swallowing hard. "I lost my job, too. The scandal. My boss didn't want the agency associated with it." She gestured vaguely. "Turns out Tom had been using my client connections for some of his schemes. There might be legal issues." The revelation surprised me. Emily's career had always been sacred to her, the one area where she'd built something entirely her own. "I didn't know," I said. "How could you? I haven't exactly been keeping you updated." She wandered through the empty bakery space, trailing her fingers over the walls where my future would take shape. "Aunt Karen told me about the competition. Second place in the Nationals. That's incredible, Jake." "Thanks," I said, still cautious about her intentions. "She also told me about Grandma's will." Emily turned to face me, shame evident in her expression. "I should have told you years ago. I thought if you had your own bakery, you wouldn't need me anymore." The admission stunned me. "Need you? Emily, you've spent years undermining me." "I know," she whispered. "I know I have." She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking very young. "Do you remember when we were kids, and you got that apprenticeship with Chef Laurent?" I nodded. It had been my first big break, working weekends at a renowned French patisserie when I was just 16. "You were so excited," Emily continued. "And then suddenly our family conversations were all about Jake the prodigy, Jake the talented one. Mom and Dad started taking your career seriously in a way they never did with mine." She shrugged. "I guess I got used to being the star before that. The pretty one, the social one, while you were always so quiet." "So you decided to sabotage me?" I asked, disbelief coloring my voice. "Not consciously, not at first." She wiped at fresh tears. "But I needed to be special too, and then it just became a pattern. Every time you succeeded, I felt like I was failing, so I found ways to put myself back in the spotlight. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. I'm not proud of it. I leaned against the counter, absorbing her words. The smell of her perfume, lighter now, less expensive, mingled with the fresh paint and plaster dust. For the first time in years, we were having an honest conversation. I came to ask for help, Emily finally said. I'm struggling, financially. The admission clearly pained her. Dad said you're hiring staff for the bakery. I thought maybe... And there it was, the familiar pattern reasserting itself. Emily in trouble, Emily needing rescue, Emily inserting herself into my success. You want to work here? I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. You don't know the first thing about baking. You said yourself it was a waste of time. I could learn, she insisted, desperation edging into her tone. I could handle the front counter, or bookkeeping, or social media. You know I'm good with people. It was true. Emily had always possessed the charisma I lacked, the easy way with strangers that translated to loyal customers. For a moment I considered it. The symmetry was tempting. Emily working for me, dependent on my success instead of the other way around. The power dynamic reversed at last. But as I looked at her hopeful face, I recognized the trap. This wasn't about reconciliation, it was about survival. Emily needed a lifeline, and once again I was the most convenient option. If I let her in, how long before history repeated itself? How long before she convinced herself she deserved more credit, more control? How long before my dream became our dream, and then eventually her dream? No, I said simply. The word hung between us, small but definitive. Emily blinked, clearly expecting a different answer. But I'm your sister, she said, as if that explained everything, erased everything. Yes, I agreed. And I hope someday we can have a real relationship, but I can't work with you, Emily. I won't. Her expression hardened slightly, the vulnerability receding. So that's it? You won't help me when I'm down? I sighed, recognizing the manipulation attempt. I'll help you. I can loan you some money to get back on your feet. I can recommend you for jobs with friends in real estate, but I won't bring you into my business. That's my boundary. Your boundary, she repeated, an edge creeping into her voice. Since when do you have those? Since I decided to stop letting other people, including you, define who I am and what I deserve. Emily stared at me, seeing perhaps for the first time the person I'd become rather than the compliant brother she'd always known. The quiet strength I'd discovered beneath years of accommodation. Mom and Dad won't be happy, she said, a last, weak attempt at leverage. I smiled slightly. Probably not, but it's not their decision. The timer on the industrial oven I'd been testing dinged sharply, the sound echoing in the empty space. A perfect punctuation to our conversation. Emily gathered her purse, dignity reasserting itself in her posture. Well, I should go. Good luck with all this. She gestured around the bakery. As she reached the door, I called after her. Emily! She turned, hope flickering across her face. I meant what I said about helping. Call me when you've found a place, and I'll spot you first and last month's rent. She nodded, a complicated mix of emotions in her eyes. Gratitude, resentment, perhaps even a hint of respect. Congratulations, Jake. You finally learned to say no to me. The bell jingled again as she left, her silhouette visible through the glass door for a moment before she disappeared down the street. I returned to my measurements, the smell of possibility stronger than ever in the space that was wholly mine. The oven timer dinged again, reminding me of the test batch of croissants inside. My recipe, my timing, my future, unfolding according to my plan for the first time. 1 year later, Bennett's celebrated its anniversary with a line of customers stretching around the block. The renovation had transformed the old neighborhood bakery into a modern patisserie, while maintaining the warmth and character my grandmother had established decades earlier. Sunlight streamed through the front windows, highlighting the gleaming display cases filled with jewel-like tarts, delicate pastries, and signature cakes that had earned write-ups in 3 major food magazines. I moved through the busy shop, greeting regulars by name, the familiar scent of butter, sugar, and vanilla enveloping me like a comforting blanket. My staff, hand-picked professionals and promising apprentices, worked with practiced efficiency, their respect evident in the precision with which they executed my recipes. "Mr. Bennett?" A young woman approached the counter, notepad in hand. "I'm from City Food Quarterly. We're doing a feature on bakeries revitalizing historic neighborhoods. Do you have time for a few questions?" "Of course," I answered, gesturing to a small table by the window. "Lucia, bring us some of the new lavender madeleines and espresso, please." As I answered the reporter's questions about my journey and vision, I caught sight of a familiar face entering the bakery. Diane Harrington, elegant as ever, smiled and waved before joining the line of customers. "Excuse me a moment," I told the reporter, crossing to greet Diane. "The place looks amazing," she said, kissing my cheek in greeting, though I expected nothing less. Diane had become an unexpected friend in the aftermath of the anniversary disaster. Our shared experience had created a bond that transcended its uncomfortable beginnings. "Thanks for coming," I said. "I wasn't sure you'd make it." "And miss celebrating the anniversary of the most dramatic cake delivery in history?" She laughed. "Never." We moved to a quiet corner, away from the bustle of customers. Diane accepted a coffee and one of my signature chocolate eclairs, closing her eyes in appreciation at the first bite. "Divine," she pronounced. "Your talent is wasted on the unworthy." I smiled at the inside joke between us. "How are things?" I asked. "The kids?" "Good, really good. The divorce is finally final. Tom got 5 years for the financial fraud." She shrugged. "The boys are adjusting. It's been a healing year." "And the practice?" "Busier than ever. Turns out being publicly betrayed is excellent for a divorce attorney's reputation. I understand the experience firsthand now." She studied me over the rim of her coffee cup. "And you? You seem settled." "I am," I confirmed, looking around at the thriving business I'd built. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "Have you heard from her?" Diane asked quietly. I knew she meant Emily. "Occasionally. She's in Chicago now, working for a friend's real estate company. Starting over." "Do you miss her?" The question gave me pause. "I miss who we could have been to each other," I said finally. "But not the reality of what we were." Diane nodded understanding. "Some relationships are better observed from a distance." After she left, promising to return for her standing order of weekend pastries, I returned to the reporter to finish our interview. As we wrapped up, the bell above the door jingled, and I glanced up to see a community center group arriving for a scheduled baking class. Mrs. Chen, who had eventually sold Rosewood to become my business partner, greeted them warmly and led them to the teaching kitchen in the back of the shop. The space, designed specifically for the free community classes I'd instituted as part of honoring my grandmother's legacy, filled with excited voices. "That's part of our outreach program," I explained to the reporter. "We teach basic baking skills to underserved communities and at-risk youth." "Where did that idea come from?" she asked, making notes. I thought for a moment. From understanding that talent needs nurturing and opportunity to thrive, and that sometimes the most meaningful creations come from what has been broken. After the interview, I moved to the teaching kitchen to observe the class in progress. Mrs. Chen was demonstrating how to make a simple shortbread, her practiced hands guiding a young girl through the proper technique for cutting butter into flour. "Feel the texture," she instructed. "Baking is about touch, about connection to your ingredients." The girl nodded seriously, her small fingers working the dough with growing confidence. Around the room, other students were at various stages of the process, the air rich with the scent of vanilla and toasting almonds. I slipped out to check on the main bakery floor, pausing by the window that overlooked the street. Across the way, in the small park where neighborhood residents gathered, I caught sight of a familiar figure sitting alone on a bench. Emily. Her hair was shorter now, her style more subdued. She appeared to be watching the bakery, though she made no move to approach. Our last contact had been a brief text exchange on our parents' anniversary 3 months ago. For a moment, I considered going outside, inviting her in to see what I'd built, to taste the success she'd tried so hard to prevent or claim for herself. But as I watched, she stood and walked away, glancing back just once before disappearing around the corner. Some distances couldn't be bridged with a cake, no matter how perfectly crafted. Some ingredients, once added to the mix, changed everything permanently. I returned to the teaching kitchen just as the timer buzzed. The students gathered around the oven as Mrs. Chen demonstrated how to check for doneness, the golden brown shortbread emerging perfectly baked. "You see?" she said, her voice carrying through the warm, fragrant air. "Sometimes the simplest things, done with care and attention, become something extraordinary." The young girl who had been struggling earlier held up her creation proudly, beaming when I nodded approval. "I didn't think I could do it," she admitted. "But it turned out right." "That's the secret," I told her, helping distribute cooling racks. "Believing you can create something beautiful even when others doubt you, especially then." As the class continued, I moved through the rows of students, offering guidance and encouragement. This, I realized, was the true measure of success, not revenge or recognition, but the ability to transform what had once been used to diminish me into something that now elevated others. Outside, the line of customers continued to grow as word spread about the anniversary specials. My staff moved with confident efficiency, the business running smoothly without my constant oversight. The bitter aromas of dark chocolate and espresso mingled with the sweet scent of vanilla and baking bread, creating the unmistakable perfume of a place where good things were created with care. I paused at the door between the teaching kitchen and the main shop, taking in the scene, the contrast between the eager beginners behind me and the polished professionalism before me. Two aspects of the same passion, the same purpose. A student called for my assistance with a troublesome pastry cream, and I turned back to the teaching kitchen, rolling up my sleeves. There would always be new challenges, new recipes to master, new skills to share. The past had given me the ingredients, both bitter and sweet, but the creation itself was entirely my own. And it was, at last, exactly as I wanted it to be.